we will now kick off our first panel. And I would like to start inviting our first panel, our panelists. The topic is, the industry preparedness to meet BS6. How ready are we? Dr. Goenka alluded to some of that in his keynote address, but of course, we will be getting more into detail on that. We have Martin Schwenk, who's the Managing Director and CEO of Mercedes-Benz India, joining us on the panel, obviously looking at the upper end of the market. We have Krishnan Sundarajan, the Managing Director of Renault Nissan Technology. Again, they are hugely invested in BS6, clearly with such a strong manufacturing base there. From the component side, we have Mr. Kanyapan, who's the Managing Director of WAPCO India and the Chairman of the ACMA sub-pillar on regulation. So really, he will be throwing a lot of insights on that. And we have, even from the lube side, we have Dr. Y.P. Rao, who's the Chief Technical Officer of Gulf Oil International Group. We regret that Mr. Raman, who was to join us, he had some emergency. I think everyone's having emergencies these days, so completely understandable. And literally 20 minutes before he has excused himself, we are hoping we will get him tomorrow. He has said he will try and join in on a session tomorrow. So he sends his apologies, and we also apologize for not having him here. But I would like to, maybe start this session off. We have just one moment, please. Yes. I would like to start off with Mr. Schwenk. Martin, obviously, this whole question of are we prepared for BS6? Again, I think at your end of the market, it's a little easier, I would imagine, given the flexibility on margins and the fact that the tech is already developed globally. So would like you to kick off this session and, share your thoughts on your experiences. Yes, I know it's at the upper end, but obviously there's a lot of technology gone in, AdBlue availability, any challenges you faced. Look forward to hearing from you on this.
Good morning, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. I would try to share a few slides because I have prepared for that format. Let me see whether I'm capable of doing that, and then I would straight go into that. Thomas, could you confirm if it's visible?
Yes, it is visible. Perfect. It's gone seamlessly.
Okay. So good morning again, and thanks for having me in this panel and this discussion. I would also want to say, if I just hear about emergency, I sincerely hope that everyone is safe. And I was this morning actually thinking it's kind of tough to do business as usual at the other end. I think we are all busy with trying to keep people safe and help wherever we can. So, but again, the business goes on, and I really hope that everyone is fine. I would like to share some of Mercedes-Benz's view here. And with that, I would straight do a very brief look back. I mean, looking back, it's clear April 1st last year we introduced, and I think Dr. Goenka already mentioned, it was absolutely a massive task to get there. And things got even a little bit more complicated with the onslaught of the pandemic at the time. Nevertheless, I would really think the industry coped quite well with, I think, a very good inventory management, and on the other hand, with a very strong product planning and a process around that. So that is really something I could see worked across the industry quite successfully. When I look now a little bit closer to my home here, Mercedes, then for us, the game was a little bit different. Let me look back. We already had the opportunity in January 2018 to run in the first BS6 vehicles, and that was 2 years ahead of regulation. And I would want to spend a few minutes to explain how that was possible, because that can also give some indication on for the future. I mean, so how was that actually possible, even on BS4 fuels? On the one hand, obviously, it's based on technology. We have SCR technology with diesel particle filter on the diesel vehicles. We have catalytic converters and auto particle filters on our petrol vehicles introduced. So we were actually able to overachieve the requirements, and I would want to point out specifically here NOx and particulate matters, which we were really very well set up with these technologies to achieve. If you see here, for example, that's example of a GLA 220 diesel. You see in the left hand the NOx levels. You see the blue is the limit, the green is what we could do in the lab. That's just an example, and similarly on particular matters, you see that the limit is much higher. I mean, it's not exactly zero, but it's close to zero on what the GLA shows in the lab. So for me, quite clearly, the advantage here of the early implementation comes from a harmonized and also a converging emission norms. We already, clearly EU 6 was there already. Our cars were attuned to that technology, and it really helped then for us to be quickly in the game here. And that's the point I will make again later. Harmonization, standardization, and converging of norms will definitely help on the one hand to fast adoption, but also creating business opportunities for the Indian markets and exports. Now looking into now BS6 phase 2, again, we are ready already. And again, it follows the very same thought. We have in Europe already real driving condition RDE implemented in the norm Euro 6D, and that is changing the game in that sense that it's not around the lab results, it's about the on-round results. And you see here now on the left in the little graph again what the GLA is doing on that in NOx. On the right you see what's doing on particular matters, and again the current thresholds for BS6. What you can see that surprisingly, you could almost say the car does even better perform in the real driving conditions than it does in the lab result. And again, that is based on the EU 6 requirements there. So substantial overachievements. And that is really because the cars are designed and optimized to perform under real driving conditions. So they're even better than the lab results or running on the test rig because they meant to be in the field, and that's how they optimized. So with the introduction of new engines, which we had done also around BS6 implementation, then from 2019 and 2020. So I can say globally all our cars that we sell now are compliant with EU 6 standards, and that will help us. EU 6D standards, and that in the example of the GLA, you see it here, that will help us to be ready for the phase 2 norms already today. Again, that is not something which has been done for India. It's based on, again, convergence and harmonization of norms that helps then eventually for fast adoption. So that is the story here. If I look now ahead and going past and beyond, then the picture is not completely clear. It is clear in the EU, and Dr. Goenka mentioned that the discussion is around EU 7. What you see in the little table below, you see really how India has to a certain extent followed what happened also in the EU in a faster pace and has caught up there, and I would expect that to continue. Nevertheless, what's happening and playing out in Europe at the moment is obviously the discussion on EU 7, but that goes, and then it goes even further. It's about zero emission carbon neutrality, and if you were to follow the press as I do that in Europe, in Germany, you feel there's a lot of politicians who actually feel a car should not have any emissions at all. That is clearly in the thoughts of many people. Of course, no emissions, that is something which you can never achieve with an ICE engine, at least no emissions at the vehicle itself. There you have also to look into electric. So the regulations are still in growing, but I would want to make the point, it is again necessary to be aligned with the globally developing roadmaps. And I think in the past, Europe has shown a good indication for what is coming and is possible. And I would hope similar path forward is also there to be considered. Now, what is then actually the next after phase 2 in India? We would expect, but that's not really all set. There could be also a change in the test protocol going into the WLTP, which we have in many markets in Europe. But also I'm fully aware we have a strong emerging discussion also around alternative fuels, ethanol, certainly to a large extent. Is it E20? Is it higher ratios? I mean, E10 is for sure granted, but how do we go further about it? And then what will be BS7 look like? Again, I'm hoping to see some how can I say, convergence also with European standards then. And then obviously the focus will remain on CO2 reduction and the adoption on electric vehicles, on plug-in hybrids, maybe as well. So that will be a global focus for sure. And that's also why I digress for a second into the electric space, because that is also something which will all of us keep busy now going forward. EVs will play an important role, the important role when it comes to carbon neutrality, when it comes to basically zero emission at the vehicle itself, where it is operated. So Mercedes, we have last year introduced our first electric vehicle, the EQC. It really helps us to understand what customer expectations are, how to operate a network, to really understand requirements for an EV. And I can say we have a positive feedback, but from these relatively limited units to really grow into a much bigger footprint, that is still quite some way to go. And I think one of the things really to look at is also specifically in our space, you have to have desirable products who can actually deliver also on the aspirational level, say on range, on technology. And just 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure some of you might have seen, Mercedes has had the global world premiere of the EQS, a completely newly designed vehicle, 770 kilometers. For me, important to mention that now is not to sell the car. We'll see anyways when that will be possible, but actually to say also the aspiration, to create the aspiration and to show what is possible going forward in terms of technology and future. It is important that we have these kind of products also to attract the customers and also to create the perception around the markets. Nevertheless, the challenges will remain. Price, I could also say cost disparity. It's still more expensive to produce a battery-driven vehicle. We have obviously everything around charging, which is certainly a need, and range anxiety, or even more than anxiety that you actually get stuck, is certainly something which needs to be addressed with a strong network as well. So that's my thoughts on that. And I have just one final slide to conclude. For me, after BS6 phase 2, it is important, and I stress it again, to create a stable and harmonized regulatory environment that will help to give guidance what the companies have to do. It will help us to adopt fast to clean technologies. And that is the one leg. And the other one, obviously, if we all believe we want zero emission strategies or lower and lower CO2 footprints, we have to continue incentivizing electric vehicles. We can also talk about what about GST and taxation for cleaner vehicles than for others? Is there no incentive to do that as well? It could be PHEV, it can be others who fulfill norms. That creates demand and market, and we need to support that for sure in order to grow, also to come to growth rates like 12, 14% or more. Yeah, and then of course, and I think that's happening to a good extent already. As an industry player, we always would hope that there is an engagement with the different stakeholders. That's the government for sure, and it is comprehensive in including the different views. I think SIAM is making more and more progress in these areas as well. For us, it's important that we have the industry involved, but I would also want to say, not with the EU as the ones who slow down the process. It should be the ones who talk about how to facilitate, how to make things happen, and to ask for a joint roadmap and then set out implementation strategies around that. That is my 2 cents to the topic, and I would head back to you.
Thanks, Martin. That was really a fantastic overview. And, I think the question is the industry prepared? I think Mercedes is one company that's been ahead of the curve. I mean, the fact that it was launched BS6 well ahead of the deadline. But clearly, I think, looking at the technologies that are there, of course, I'm sure this will come at a cost, which quite frankly, at the higher end, it's much easier to justify. But I want to now turn to Mr. Sundarajan, really at the other end of the spectrum, at the mass segment. This how ready are we? And Dr. Goenka also alluded to the point that perhaps should there be a slight delay in the implementation of the norms given the effect of the pandemic? And basically, how ready are we, the cost impact? So just your thoughts on, what you feel is going to be the challenges going ahead.
So thank you, Herman. So yes, I think 3 important factors that I want to register. Firstly, thanks for allowing us to talk on this subject. Very importantly, it is that we have to be as a team together to represent what we want as a cross-learning, and how we are able to adapt to 6.2 in the days to come. As Martin said, they are in a spectrum of where affordability is not a problem, but we know that we have moved down the segment and we are more into an entry segment of cars, both in Renault and Nissan brand. Having said that, it is initial thought when the BS6 was notified to us, we thought it's a cakewalk, because we know how to sell in US, we know how to sell in Europe, so we know we can do BS6. Yeah? This is the way that I would say that we took it very lightly, just comparing to Euro 6 and say BS6 should be easy. But when we went into when the rubber meet the wheel, when we went into the adaptation, we went into even have to stop the diesel powertrain. Not that we are not compliant, but it is about affordability. So whether the customers are going to take the burden onto them, and whether the TCO will allow us to put all the technologies, what we have in Europe, what we have in US, in India. So in that pragmatic view, even we were at the segment of 12 lakh segment. Now you know that most of our cars are running in 6.5 to 7 lakh, that's type of segment. But yes, we are moving in both the Triber, Magnite and Kiger towards 9 lakh segment. So the affordability is something that we have to strongly catch and understand, that application of technologies, application of technobricks. So we have 2 types of technobricks, which we would have just copy pasted and made compliant engines and compliant vehicles. But it will not fly for a simple reason that the affordability will be a big chance. And because the affordability is not okay, if we are unable to generate more and more profit, we will not have more vehicles to come in the future. So for moving from 6.1 to 6.2, at least we had a very good learning of understanding that the technobricks, what you apply in Europe, can't be a copy paste here. So we have to go into this adaptation. And for this adaptation, we had taken enough time based on the learning of 6.1. We have taken enough time to learn, and we are trying to solve the problem towards going to 23. So whether 23 is a right milestone, technically speaking, it's a right milestone that we can go. But what's important is what are the next milestone that should be focused. So just focusing on this milestone for 6.2, I think the two important things that we all need to solve together is, we know that the areas which we have to tackle is on the PGM, which is related to the hardware, and there are related to the soft side, which is all the semiconductor. And you know that recently, both these places are going through a difficulty. What I mean on the difficulty is, it's not to get the PGM. It's possible, but you're going to pay significantly high on PGM. Those who have invested on PGM, you know that it is like 25x multiplication in 1 year. And similarly on semiconductor, whether we like it or not, COVID is there. That means all the wafers are going to move towards non-automotive segment, because there is something that is needed for the society to balance. So in a nutshell, whether you want to do the soft amendment on related to all the semiconductors and the hard amendments in terms of the PGM, there will be some amount of difficulty in order to go towards the milestone of implementing at the right time, at the right cost. But technically, we can do that, but affordability towards the TCO, towards mapping to customer is something that we have to be careful. Having said that, what as industry we have to see that is the ecosystem that is needed for 6.2 beyond is something that we have to see. I also want to add the two important elements. If you see the latest Q1 sales of Renault in Europe, you can see that the Zoe, new Zoe with the long range is one of the top seller. Yeah, it's the top seller. And similarly, when you talk about the bookings of Aria, the new Nissan, which we are completely creating in a new electrified platform, the booking is too high. And hence, moving towards the zero emission car, globally speaking, is possible. But for us to move from 6.2 beyond, I think we should involve on certain techno bricks, not directly on BEV, because it is not an affordable thing for at least our brands to come in. So we need to get into the second segment, which is either CNG, LPG, bio, E10, E20, and so on. So 6.2 deferment is not the only goal we should look for. We should go for 6.2 at the right time, where the customers are able to take the product at the right cost. But the next step on BS7, whether is it going to be Euro 7 copy paste or an adaptation, and additionally the RDE factors, what is in Europe is a little bit different than in India. You know, the drive cycles are very different on the NEDC. So I think that is in the spectrum that we have to approach, and these are my pointers that I thought I will share you, Sarma. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sundarajan. I think very, very valid, pertinent points, and I liked your point that we can technically meet BS 6.2, but at what cost? I'm going to come back to you, but I just want to have a round of opening remarks, and I'd like Mr. Kanyapan, if he can come on. I think he's on. Yeah, I think you're on mute. Yes. Again, it looks like cost is quite an issue. So really at the component level, is this the key? Obviously, we've heard of semiconductor issues. PGM is a problem. It seems to me that, it's really on the supplier side where a lot of the hurdles and the challenges are in the future transition. So just your thoughts on that, especially since you are, really representing the component side.
Thank you, Mr. Saurabhji. Good morning for the opportunity to be in this platform today. I would like to go back to the points which Dr. Goenka was making, that the Indian component industry has come a long way, both in terms of quality and its ability to deliver the technologies. In the area of regulations, both in terms of safety and emissions, again, we have come a very long way, particularly when we take up, whether it's the ABS or electronic braking system that's going to come, or the ADAS system that is likely to come. So in the area of safety, the roadmap is very clear, and the industry is very much ready to take on the challenges and support the industry. not only by bringing technology here, but also developing and adapting these technologies to this market with a localized support. The same thing has been happening in the emissions area also. What has been achieved in the area of emission, particularly with the BS6, is remarkable. All of us know in a matter of 3 years, we are able to deliver what was actually impossible some time back. The industry actually has not only just brought the technology here, but as I highlighted that our focus was largely localization and offer the solution for this market, because this market is completely unique compared to other global markets, because you need to offer the solutions, what is required in this market and at a price point the market can accept. So the industry actually, apart from adopting this, but also a lot of work we do in developing these technologies in this country, more suitable for this, if not everything, but we are in that path. The third point I would like to highlight is we have been, like Mr. Martin was saying, we have been adopting the European regulations. We are very rapidly catching up with in this regulation area. But this is we have to continue the path and move fast in this area, because this is the need of the hour. It's not only it's not a technology, but it's essentially required for us from the energy security point of view, from the greenhouse commitment that we have made globally, also to provide to the society clean, safe, and affordable mobility. So all these things, actually, it's a necessity. The industry has to deliver. So from a industry perspective, I would like to suggest that we need to continue at this momentum. Of course, a lot of challenges. A few areas, the industry suggests, common industry suggests that we have a joint roadmap with the SIAM, ACMA, government, and other stakeholders. Together, we need to prepare a technology roadmap, which actually is more appropriate, more aligned, that will actually be the right path that we need to take. In that perspective, ACMA has actually created an expert group within the component industry, one for safety, one for emissions, another for electrification. Of course, we are having another set of team which is working on the localization and connectivity as well. So ACMA itself is preparing for this evolving scenario. Would like to handhold or be a part of this ecosystem, strongly associated with SIAM and the government. Of course, we are also preparing to preparing to operate in the alternate fuel systems, and also the industry is getting ready, even though in a slow pace, for an electrification ecosystem. Of course, India is far behind what is happening compared to globally, but I'm sure we'll be able to catch up as the industry evolves, as the ecosystem develops. Also, we would like to appreciate the government for the initiative that has been taken on the scrappage side. The policy announcement has come. I'm sure this will also go a long way in preparing the industry to what is going to evolve. So overall, the auto component industry will evolve as a strong economic growth driver, supporting the society through the clean, safe, and affordable mobility route. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kanyapan. We are clearly, I think, from your side, it's as I think even Mr. Sudrajan has said, cost is definitely one of the issues which is a big hurdle, because as we know, cleaning up the air is a costly affair, whichever sector you look at. I want to turn to ask, Dr. Rao on, the lube industry's role. Now, I know it's a very kind of a niche kind of, a product, but a very critical product as well. And, your thoughts, we've had a year of BS6, AdBlue availability, you would be looking at these areas, obviously even new generation lubes. So, do you think there is a key role for the lube industry also in meeting these tighter norms?
Thanks, Armos. First of all, it's our privilege to be associated with the Autocar Professional in bringing out this conference, the second version of this conference. First one was held very successfully in 2019. And it's very timely to have this conference now, as other speakers have mentioned that. As everybody is aware that oil industry plays an enabling role to bring out the new after-treatment systems and the new engine designs and new vehicles and bringing out the suitable fuel as well as the suitable lubricant. In fact, in 2017, when it was announced that India is going to skip BS5 and we are going to move straight away from BS4 to BS6, the entire world was wondering whether we'd be able to deliver it, both auto industry and fuel industry. And we have successfully proved as a country, I think we have successfully proved that we are capable and we have brought it exactly on time. And not only brought on time, and a lot of costs were optimized, and by using a frugal engineering, we are capable of as a country. And we are able to deliver vehicles at, of course, the slightly costs have gone up, the price have gone up, but not at a level where Europe has seen when it was introduced. So that is a very, very good part of the India. And as Dr. Goenka has mentioned very, very rightly in the beginning, they were wondering, in fact, CIAM itself was wondering whether the oil industry will be able to bring out the fuel. You know, bringing out the fuel with a 10 ppm sulfur was very, very challenging. And in fact, it was demonstrated. Not only they brought the fuel around January of 2020 so that it can flush out the entire supply chain system. So it was very successfully implemented. And before that, even fuel was made available for the trials and other validations. And coming to lubricants, see that the lubricants, the BS6 vehicles required a different type of a lubricant, low ash lubricant, low SAPs, what we call it, because it needs to protect the after-treatment systems. Whatever engine oils were used till BS4, they were not suitable. So some of the companies like ours, multinational companies, we had a lot of experience in Western countries, in Europe. We are able to use that experience and we are able to quickly bring the technology. It's not that we just brought the technology and we adopted to the local conditions. And we have done a validations. In fact, in Gulf Oil, we started the validation as early as in 2017 with a BS6 technology in BS4 vehicles. So first our aim was to prove it that the BS6 technology also works in BS4 vehicles. And we proved successfully. And as and when BS6 prototype vehicles started available, we are able to do the extensive validation. In fact, my colleagues in India, they are run about almost 15 million kilometers. They are run in different operating conditions. With that, in fact, we are much ahead of that. April 2020, we brought that engine oils which are compliant with that BS6 vehicles. And they also added a value besides bringing that suitable engine oils for BS6 vehicles. They also, by using the same oils for the backward compatibility is extremely important, because what happens otherwise, by mistake, if the users, if the consumers use that BS4 engine oil in BS6 vehicles, it spoils the after-treatment systems. So thereby the backward compatibility was proved, not only proved, in fact, they were able to prove it to the 50% extended range interval, so that the consumers will be able to accept it easily, so that there's no cost burden on them. TCO, there's no TCO burden on them. So with that, they were able to successfully adopt that. And now I think our company has introduced much ahead in all the segments, lubricants, engine oils that are required for the BS6 vehicles. Now coming to the next stage, what is that the BS6.2, as it was brought out by the earlier speakers? The two factors are very, very important. What oil industry can do? How do we facilitate that implementation of that? One is fuel economy is becoming very important. Is the question when it will come? Is it 2022 or 23? That is being under discussion. And that is going to be, you require some help from the lubricant for that to meet that kind of emission norms. In fact, lubricant is the cheapest way of achieving the fuel economy norms. Whatever you are able to achieve, first you need to achieve through the by using the right lubricants. So in that context, what we have been in Gulf Oil, our colleagues in India have been quietly validating the thinner engine oils for the last 2 years. First, they wanted to prove it. When you require a thinner engine oils to achieve the fuel economy, but the foremost important thing is when you bring the thinner engine oils, it should not affect the engine longevity. That is extremely important. So they were able to validate that. They were able to see that it can withstand, and you are not required to, engine life is not going to be affected. Having done that, now our colleagues are working in India that in validating for that fuel economy potential. And second thing is that RDE. RDE means your after treatment systems continue to function almost at the 100% efficiency level. For that, what you require is, what happens, lubricant, like engine oil. There are some components are there, that ash content and phosphorus content and sulfur content. Ash content comes from the detergent, which is very, very useful to protect the engine. But at the same time, phosphorus and sulfur comes from the anti-wear agent, which is also extremely important to protect the engine parts. But at the same time, you need to optimize all these three components to protect the after-treatment systems. Otherwise, they affect the after-treatment systems. Hence, we have been working on that next generation engine oils to optimize this ash content and phosphorus content and sulfur content, so that our automotive industry will be able to, as and when they want to go either 2023 or 2024, whenever it happens, we want to be ready, and we want to offer a next generation engine oils for those vehicles when you go to 6.2, Euro 6.2. And coming to as far as the AdBlue, you also touched upon the AdBlue. AdBlue has become a very important, of course, many OEMs implemented in BS4 solutions also. But now almost all OEMs have implemented for BS6. AdBlue or diesel exhaust fluid, people call it as a diesel exhaust fluid also. In fact, the distribution now, product is available throughout India. There's no problem. And in fact, Gulf Oil was one of the first companies who have started way back in 2010, put up our own manufacturing facility in India. And we also have got an AdBlue license now. In fact, we have got the manufacturing arrangement in all the 4 regions to meet the requirements. But the only issue with when I speak to my OEM friends, the only issue that is coming is, there is no exact regulations to control the quality and aftermarket surveillance as far as the AdBlue quality is concerned. There is a proliferation of suppliers as far as AdBlue is concerned. You require a automotive grade urea, you require a deionized water, and you require a proper testing facilities. In fact, I can tell you that it's not that I'm trying to exaggerate that. The testing facilities, if you put all the testing facilities, cost of the testing facilities probably will be of similar or slightly higher than the manufacturing facility, what you require for AdBlue testing. So thereby the proliferation, thereby some issues are being seen. So as far as the Bureau of Indian Standard is concerned, we are now adopted the ISO standards as a joint standard. So as far as the specifications are concerned, they are going to be available in a couple of months for the AdBlue and diesel exhaust fluid. But there's a question of regulation is required, end of the day. Some certification is required. In fact, in the last conference, Harmoz, if you recollect, I suggested to the panel that how about that, like VDA is a German automobile manufacturers have got their own brand, that AdBlue is their brand. Like that, why SIAM cannot look into the possibility of having their own this thing and having some kind of a certification arrangement in their own interest. So these are some of the points that I want to bring out to this forum. Then if anything else is there, then we can discuss later.
Thanks, Mr. Rao. And I think just want to pick up from your last point on some of the challenges you faced with AdBlue. And I think with that, it's just appropriate to toss it back to Mr. Schwenk, because clearly, your cars are all SCR. They all need AdBlue, each and every one of them. So could you share your experiences, how it's been in a year gone by with the customers? Have there been issues of, spurious AdBlue? Is it too early? Do you think this could proliferate in the future? How is the customer acceptance to it? Are there any issues of having to top out outside the service schedules? So, it'd be interesting to have your kind of, let's say experience, because I think, you've gone 100% to SCR. Yeah, you're on mute, Martin. I think you'll have to get up.
Sorry. You mentioned already or implied, yes, our cars not only running all diesel vehicles with SCR technology, also they need AdBlue, and that is combined in most of all instances with the service intervals. Yeah, so cars being on the road when they get serviced, the top up there eventually. Quite frankly, I'm not aware of any supply issue across the country for in between. Maybe also the mileages in the last 12 months or 18 months were not exactly what there were. But then I would take Mr. Rao's words and assume that there should be no issues. But I'm not aware of any. I know that the supply to our dealers and the top up and the refill that happens during service is absolutely secured. So maybe in the future, but last year's mileages wouldn't have created that condition, at least not I'm aware of it, Thomas.
Right. Great. And, Martin, I just want to stick with you, to get your thoughts on this whole issue of cost. Now, why I'm asking you is, quite frankly, you have the luxury, being in the luxury segment, of being, let's say, the least cost sensitive towards the new technologies. But, as part of the Indian auto industry, would you empathize with, some of, the other OEMs, that this whole cost versus technology emission balance has to be looked at? While, Mr. Sundarajan said, yes, it is technically possible to go ahead, but at what cost will that come? Do you think, A, there is a case for a slight deferment of the norms? Just looking at it from your side, all the technology is available. But all this technology does come as a cost, and even the EV side, while you've launched the EQS, absolutely outstanding vehicle, but it's in a stratospheric part of the market as compared to what we have in India. Clearly, EVs are a big challenge, though that is the ultimate way of meeting the emission norms, but I don't think that's very practical at all. So, looking at someone who has all these technologies as a company that's been at the cutting edge of everything, I mean, looking, let's say, taking a slightly more holistic view, looking at the other OEMs operating in the Indian market, what do you think is there a balance that should be obtained? Because in the end, we're a very cost-sensitive market.
Yeah, I'm very well aware about the cost sensitivity. It's actually value-oriented, I would think, the Indian population and the customer. So before I give you a straight answer, I think we need also to look into the environment itself. I think the public opinion, the government movements, but also the customers, they will ask more and more for cleaner mobility. I think we can see that. I mean, the concern about sustainability and cleanliness of drivetrain is developing, and that means we need to have the right standards and also the right way going forward. I can appreciate that it is a cost effect, yes, but what we will always try to do, and the industry has tried to do, to balance it and to add it to product substance, which actually makes then the value proposition the customer looks for. And at the end, in my view, the customer is interested in on-road price of that. And we have seen, for example, for EVs with reduction on GST or road taxes, there's something to be done. And I cannot see why it wouldn't be possible to have also some kind of support out of this bucket, which will then increase also the numbers in that segment, which actually is incentivizing clean technologies, not only electric vehicles. It can be CO2 based, it can support PHEVs and other things like this as well, which would then help the adoption of cleaner technologies, and at the end will support the growth of the industry. So if I look at it from a customer point of view, there's also something that can happen in that framework. When you ask me about the industry, of course, I'm fully aware that I mean, we have a 23 timeline, and that is not for every player the same to be achieved. And I can also understand that the pandemic at the moment, we see it ourselves, has put some I would say slowing momentum on some of the activities, some of the financials, but also on the process side itself. So I think as SIAM is also supporting a process maybe to delay it by a year, we would not be opposed to that. But I think at the end, it should be in an overall understanding what is our mid and long-term plan, and also have an alignment beyond that on a roadmap, similarly to what I said earlier, across the industry with the other stakeholders from ACMA, also to the government representatives.
Right. I just want to pick up one more point which Mr. Sundararajan said, is that it's beyond the roadmap beyond, let's say 6.2 and RDE and CAFE, which seems a bit hazy going towards Euro 7. Do you think that also needs to start getting defined very quickly? Because, right now it's very clear until 23, but this is always a long lead business. Investments need to be made now, sometimes, for planning ahead. Do you think that also, needs to be kind of be made a lot more definite and a proper roadmap beyond what we have right now in place?
Yeah, yes, Harmat. I think I want to echo on two type of action. As you know, the technical center which we are in with 9,000 people. Obviously, you don't need 9,000 people to do the job for India market, yeah, because the market share. What we have is almost 4% combined both Renault and Nissan. So most of the aspiring engineer, the top brains always ask, when we do this for ARIA and Zoe, why are we not doing it for India? This is the sort of thinking they do. So that means coming back to this question of 6.2 deferment, I want to echo to what Mr. Martin said. It's not about 6.2 deferment, but I think the midterm and the long term towards 2030 is important. Because the techno bricks, what we build should be sustainable in terms of business, in terms of an ecosystem which we are building with suppliers. If we are very clear about that we are going to go to ethanol, or we are going to go to CNG, and we are going to go into a plug-in hybrid, then it is allowing us to know where to invest and bring the technologies. Obviously, we have a chance to bring the technologies either from Japan or from Europe. It is easy for adaptation to the industry per se by looking into the midterm. But if we are short-sighted just by looking into 6.2, my worry is there is a lot amount of anxiety among the team which is supposed to create the ecosystem and the industrialists who are investing the money. And I think that's where I feel that the midterm is more important, to know that do we take the next set of techno bricks and understand and adapt it to the TCO or the value the Indian customer will pay, so that we are able to drive the system in a cohesion rather than reacting every time to the needs. Today, if I see for 6.2, our reaction is not so bad compared to BS6, because at least we learned on one curve. But after 6.2, is it going to be BS7, or is it well-to-wheel, or is it CO2 merits? That's what we should see in order to synchronize the workflow or the talent that we have to develop here, the adaptation of our tier 1 and industry per se. So that's what I want to voice out as a reaction to your question.
But, just talking about, developing and localizing and building the local technology, do you think one of our, let's say, challenges is a scale or a lack of it? Or do you think we have enough scale right now to really invest in localizing some of these technologies, which are actually very, very expensive? In fact, that's one of the reasons why companies are joining hands, to get more scale, to share the cost of development. So do you think in India, though we are, let's say a pretty large market, we are focused at the bottom end where margins are very, very small, and you need the scale to kind of really, eke out the profits. So it's a really, what I would say, a very high volume, low margin game. Do you think that is a challenge?
Well, I think we should not only look at India market, because once you reach BS6, then you are global. You can actually not only produce to India market, but you can export as well. That's the approach we are taking, and I'm sure most companies are taking, because these products become now, whatever we supply to BS6 vehicle in India, it is also the same products are needed in other parts of the world. And we are able to offer at a much competitive price manufacturing from here. That drives the competitive advantage for us to offer it to Indian customers. So the scale is today, it's a global scale, not only India scale.
Right. And, Mr. Rao, turning to you, clearly, from your side, again, let's say I'm just talking about the cost issue. How does the, let's say, moving to these newer emission norms, tighter standards impact the lube industry from a cost point of view? I mean, obviously, there's a cost of development, raw material costs, which clearly do have some impact.
Thanks, Armoz, once again, that yes, there's the R&D workers involved when you want to especially bring the technology and adapt to local conditions, which we have been doing it. And I also have seen that some in the chat box, some of the queries, people are asking what kind of a cost impact is there when you moved from BS4 to BS6 engine oils. I would like to answer in two parts. As I mentioned that with respect to using the BS6 engine oil in the BS4 vehicles, we were successful in increasing the drain interval by 50%. Thereby, in fact, BS6 engine oil in BS4 vehicles, the customers will benefit per kilometer basis. When it comes to the BS6, when you use the BS6 engine oil in the BS6 vehicle, of course, compared to BS4, BS6 definitely costs have gone up. The way vehicle costs have gone up when you moved from BS4 to BS6. But again, in that category, we have got a couple of variety of products. One is for a normal drain interval and other one for a longer drain interval. Hence, to put a exact cost difference is not really the thing, but I can say that as a ballpark figure, I can say it is aligned with the like a vehicle cost. People talk about what is the cost increase. We know that how much when they move to BS4 to BS6, what kind of a cost increase is there. I can say that probably engine oil costs also will be in the similar range as far as that is concerned. Yes, future challenge is now to optimize that, as I told you, to RDE to ensure that after treatment systems will give a longer life. For that, yes, there's a quite a bit of investment is required. A lot of work is required to optimize the products. That's where that the next 2 to 3 years, there's a lot of work is involved in that.
And Mr. Natarajan, I'd like to turn to you because, again, I want to just focus on this whole emotional part of emissions, which sometimes is more emotional than safety. Again, looking at the BS6 deadline and the way it was rolled out, you cannot sell, you have to stop producing. And this now might seem to be the trend even going forward. But I'm sure it must be very disruptive, very difficult to plan because you can never, when you can stop your production, but you can never know when you will sell your last vehicle. It always becomes a gamble. I'm sure you had problems with the K9K, which had to be phased out before, let's say April 1 last year. But do you think sometimes we are getting a little too emotional on this issue, and really a more pragmatic a more pragmatic approach needs to be adopted going forward? And even perhaps, just going back to what the world does is when you have a norm or a regulation, it should be you stop producing then, because obviously the cars will be in the system and they will eventually be cleared out. But it stops it avoids the havoc, the huge disruption and immense loss to companies as a result.
Yeah, so Armad, actually, I think I want to react in terms of this comparison between safety and emission. Generally, on a safety also, if we look into the curve in which the India picked up the airbags and ESPs and so on, it was really logarithmic. It didn't happen very seamlessly. It took a lot of time for people to decide to put money for airbags, because the variants of the car had enough way for the customer to choose whether they want with the airbag or not, right? So when we look into the safety introduction, the rollout was easy for a simple reason. You have a menu, what is the level of NCAP, what type of active and passive system that you should do, and you just adapt it and put it into the car. And there is lot amount of ecosystem that are dependent when it is emission. So this is the first clarification I want to talk between safety and emission. The second one related to emission, the ecosystem, how people are, or at least from my perspective, when I put one proposal to either Yokohama or Paris to say that I want to go like this for this type of cars, and let's put all the techno bricks. The first question is, how certain are you to burn this money for this topic, right? This is the first question. And why this question is very simple, is the adherence to the protocol sometime were not to the level of what is happening in different part of the world. Today, when we see in BS6, it's a shock for us, but I think this is the sort of discipline that we should keep as a country image in terms of when there is a rule, we all follow. It should not be that only the rule is there, but there will be relaxation in India. I think that spirit is something that has evaporated when the BS6 came. Now, in the 6.2 and 7 and so on, I think when the emission rules are going to come, there won't be much of emotion that would be attached, because they clearly know that it is a tunnel. When you enter, you will get the milestone and you have no way to negotiate. And the reason for this emotion, again, I want to attach is when you look into the overall CO2 emission, somebody started thinking in the NGO, saying that the amount of CO2 coming from the car is much, much lower than cement industry, much, much lower than other type of industry or chemical industry. So this type of confused data is something that created sort of ambiguity at the people end in order to plan to put the technology at the right time. I hope, and I am very, very sure that at least from Renault Nissan perspective, we are not going to be any more emotional on this topic. It's something like, if it is set in stone, we will honor, and all the planning related to supply chain, producing the technologies that are needed and preparing the technology, I think we will be ready. And again, when I want to talk about the 6.2 readiness and beyond is something very important. This beyond will allow us to plan well so that we don't get into this emotional cycle. And the emotion cycle is predominantly because whether the rule will be really enforced, will it be consistently applied across sectors, will it be consistently applied across the segment, is something that we had as a history where we were not consistent. But I think thanks to the consistency of what's now advocated by both the manufacturing union, which is SAM and CM and ACMA and automotive industry, we are now into the path. We are not creating any anxiety in terms of will this rule happen. But what now we are talking is, let's put the goalpost at a practical place and let's apply consistently. This is the way that I would go. So I think that the next wave of emotion will not happen in emission. It will be same as safety.